Hi, I'm Ola. I'm 20 years old and I attend college in Chicago. I'm 5 feet 5 inches tall, weigh 115 pounds, and I have long, dark brown hair. Every morning when I head to class, I wear my college uniform, a green skirt, white shirt, and a dark green cardigan. People notice me, but I choose not to engage because I'm absorbed in my art, and I find little common ground with those around me. At college, my world revolves around my canvas, colors, and compositions rather than social gatherings. My social life is as quiet as an art studio late at night. I'm often perceived as distant, but in reality, I'm just more at home with my brushes than in small talk. There's a side to me that no one knows. I yearn for a connection that's as profound as the art I create. Then there's Frank, the art history professor, around 40 years old, with a beard that's more salt than pepper, and an insightful look in his eyes that pulls me in like a magnetic force. He's the only one who truly appreciates my art, challenging my creativity in ways that both intimidate and inspire me. One afternoon after a critique session, I stayed back to discuss my latest piece. Frank analyzed it with a depth that matched my own, his enthusiasm for art shining through. He offered to mentor me further, and soon, our meetings became a regular dance between paint and passion. There was an undeniable chemistry between us, an attraction that went beyond the easel. I found myself falling for him. His understanding of art, his patience, his way of seeing the world through the same lens I did, it was enlightening. Outside our sessions, my thoughts often drifted to him, imagining a connection that was more than just artist and mentor. One evening, as we were cleaning up after an art workshop, I decided to share more than just my art with Frank. I spoke about my struggles with feeling isolated in a world that often didn't understand or appreciate the depth of one's artistic expression. Frank listened, his eyes reflecting understanding, and then shared his own journey of solitude in academia. It was the first time I felt truly heard, and in that moment, I knew our connection was special. Our relationship began to take on a life of its own, like a painting evolving with each new stroke. We'd spend hours discussing the philosophical aspects of art, how it could influence and change perspectives. Our talks would often lead to personal revelations, sharing dreams and fears, painting our vulnerabilities with the same care we'd give to a masterpiece. The secrecy of our relationship added to its allure, like the hidden layers of meaning in a surrealist painting. We'd meet in his studio after hours, where the smell of oil paint mingled with our whispered conversations. There was something freeing about being with someone who understood my art and my soul. One misty evening, while we were discussing the emotional impact of color, our conversation turned more personal. Frank's hand brushed mine as we looked at a painting together. The touch was like the first brushstroke on a blank canvas, full of potential and promise. We shared a kiss that felt like the culmination of all our artistic dialogues, a perfect blend of emotion and expression. From then on, our meetings were not just about art, they were about us. We explored not only the world of art, but also our feelings and dreams. Frank had a depth of life experience, and I was eager to paint my own experiences alongside his. But with this new relationship came the need for secrecy. We were careful, meeting in places where our artistic collaboration would not be misconstrued as anything more. I'd linger after class, helping him clean up, our hands touching more than necessary. The secrecy added a layer of excitement to our encounters. As time passed, I noticed a transformation in myself. I was more vibrant in class, more inspired, perhaps because I had someone who truly connected with my vision. My art flourished, but more than that, I felt more alive. Frank wasn't just teaching me about art, he was showing me how to live it. However, every secret has its risks. There were moments of doubt, fears of our connection being exposed. What if someone saw us? What if our relationship became public? The art world can be dramatic, and I worried about Frank's position and my reputation. But every time these worries surfaced, Frank would reassure me with his calm, artistic soul, reminding me that what we had was worth the risk. Our relationship wasn't merely about passion, it was about mutual growth. We inspired each other to create, to think, to feel. Frank would challenge my artistic choices, pushing me to explore new styles, while I brought a fresh, youthful perspective to his seasoned palette. One weekend, we escaped to a secluded art retreat. Far from prying eyes, we could paint, discuss, and share moments of intimacy that only come from being truly seen. That weekend, I realized I was in love with him, not just for his understanding of art, but for his heart, his kindness, his vulnerabilities. Returning to college, I knew our relationship was more than just a muse and artist connection. It was a profound bond that enriched our lives. But as the semester ended, we knew decisions had to be made. Would we keep this hidden, or would we step into the light? In the end, we chose to keep our relationship discreet but no less real. We knew what we had was exceptional, a rare composition in our personal gallery. And as I walked into my final art exhibition, wearing that uniform, I felt not just like Ola, the artist, but like Ola, the woman who had found her place with Frank, in a world that was ours alone. Our relationship blossomed in the shadows, like an unpolished gem hidden from the world. We would meet in his studio after hours, surrounded by the soft glow of dimmed lights and the faint scent of turpentine. The walls, adorned with masterpieces and unfinished works, became witnesses to our whispered conversations and stolen kisses. Frank had a way of turning even the most mundane moments into something extraordinary. One evening, he showed me a hidden corner of the library, filled with rare art books. We spent hours there, poring over centuries-old illustrations, our shoulders brushing as we turned the pages. It felt like our little sanctuary, a place where the outside world couldn't touch us. The thrill of secrecy added a layer of intensity to our relationship. Every fleeting glance in the hallway, every casual word exchanged in class, held a deeper meaning. But with every step deeper into this uncharted territory, I found myself wondering how long we could keep this hidden. One day, Frank gave me an unexpected challenge: to create a self-portrait that captured not just my appearance, but my soul. "Show me who you are, Ola," he said, his voice carrying both a demand and a promise. I spent weeks on the painting, pouring every emotion into the canvas. Frank visited me in the studio during late hours, offering critiques that pushed me to dig deeper. His presence was both comforting and electrifying, his belief in me making me want to reach new heights. When I finally finished, I unveiled it to him in the quiet of his studio. The painting showed a woman torn between light and shadow, her hazel eyes brimming with both vulnerability and strength. Frank stared at it for a long moment, then turned to me with an intensity that took my breath away. "You've created something extraordinary," he whispered. "And it's not just the painting, it's you." As our connection deepened, so did the risks. Rumors began to swirl about the professor who spent too much time with one of his students. Though we were careful, the art world was full of observant eyes. One afternoon, a fellow student asked me bluntly why Frank seemed to favor me. Her tone was playful, but her words carried an edge of suspicion. I brushed off her comments with a laugh, but the encounter left me shaken. Frank, too, was feeling the pressure. "We need to be more cautious," he said one evening, his hand lingering on mine. "But Ola, what we have, it's worth every risk." His words reassured me, but the tension lingered, like a storm brewing on the horizon. The college announced a prestigious art exhibition, an opportunity for students to showcase their best work. Frank encouraged me to submit my self-portrait, insisting it was a piece that deserved recognition. Preparing for the exhibition consumed my days and nights. Frank and I worked together tirelessly, refining every detail. But as the event approached, I couldn't ignore the gnawing fear that our relationship might be exposed. The night of the exhibition was a whirlwind. My self-portrait stood in the center of the gallery, drawing admiration from visitors and critics alike. Frank, ever the professional, kept his distance. But our eyes met across the room, a silent exchange of pride and longing. When the judges awarded my piece the highest honor, I felt a surge of triumph. Yet, the real victory was knowing that Frank had been my guiding light throughout the journey. After the exhibition, Frank and I escaped to the retreat where our bond had first deepened. In the quiet solitude of nature, we finally spoke about the future. "We can't keep living in the shadows forever," I said, my voice trembling with both fear and hope. "What happens when this secret becomes too heavy to bear?" Frank took my hands in his blue eyes locking onto mine. "I don't want to lose you, Ola, but I also don't want to jeopardize your future or mine. We need to decide how to move forward." We spent the weekend painting side by side, letting our art speak when words failed us. By the time we returned to Chicago, we had made our decision. We would continue our relationship, but only until I graduated. After that, we would step into the light, ready to face the world as equals. After graduation, Frank and I decided to take a brief step back to allow space for reflection. The intensity of our relationship, kept hidden for so long, demanded a moment of clarity. I spent a few weeks traveling, immersing myself in art galleries across Europe, soaking in inspiration from the masters. Every painting, every sculpture seemed to whisper of Frank. His influence was woven into the fabric of how I now saw the world. One evening in Paris, as I stood before Monet's Water Lilies, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Frank. "Your vision must be breathtaking among those masterpieces. When you're ready, I'd love to see the art you create after this journey." His words brought a warmth I hadn't felt since I left Chicago. Returning home, I dove into my work with renewed energy. My studio became my sanctuary, a place where I could explore the emotions that had built up over months. Each brushstroke felt like a conversation with Frank, a dialogue of love, longing, and transformation. The result was a collection unlike anything I'd ever produced. Raw, vibrant, and deeply personal. Frank and I reconnected during the unveiling of my collection. He attended as a guest, blending into the crowd with his understated charm. When the event ended, he lingered, waiting until everyone had left. We walked together through the gallery, stopping at a piece that held special meaning for me. A painting of two figures separated by a river, but reaching toward one another. "You've captured something extraordinary," he said softly. "It's us, isn't it?" I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. In that quiet moment, we knew that no matter the distance or the obstacles, our connection would endure. With Frank's encouragement, I took a leap I had always feared. I applied for a residency at one of the most prestigious art programs in New York. To my surprise and delight, I was accepted. Moving to New York was bittersweet. It meant leaving Frank behind in Chicago, but it also opened the door to new opportunities and challenges. Our relationship adapted to the distance. We exchanged long letters, filled with reflections on art, life, and love. Frank's words were as thoughtful and poetic as ever, a lifeline that kept me grounded amidst the chaos of the city. We planned visits when we could, savoring every moment together. In New York, I found myself navigating a world of critics and collectors. My work began to gain recognition, but with success came pressure. There were moments when I felt overwhelmed, questioning whether I truly belonged in such an elite circle. During one particularly challenging time, Frank surprised me by flying to New York unannounced. Seeing him in my tiny studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases, brought me back to myself. "You belong here, Ola," he said, his voice steady. "But more than that, you belong to the art you create. Never forget that." His presence was a reminder of why I had started this journey in the first place. As my career flourished, so did my understanding of love and sacrifice. Frank and I began to talk about the future in more concrete terms. We discussed the possibility of him joining me in New York, but his commitments in Chicago made the decision complicated. Still, we remained optimistic, finding ways to bridge the gap. Years passed, and my art became a reflection of the life Frank and I had built together, even from afar. Each piece carried a fragment of our story, a shared laugh, a tender moment, a challenge overcome. The gallery owners and critics often remarked on the intimacy of my work, unaware that its soul came from a love nurtured in quiet corners and whispered conversations. One winter, Frank invited me back to Chicago for a private exhibition he had curated. It featured works from his students over the years, including my self-portrait. Standing beside him, surrounded by the echoes of our shared past, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "This is where it all began," I said, gazing at the painting. "And look how far we've come," he replied, his hand brushing mine. That evening, under the city lights, Frank proposed. His words were simple but heartfelt, a promise to continue our journey together, no matter where it led. Tears streaming down my face, I said yes. Our wedding was as unconventional as our love story. We held it in an art gallery, surrounded by paintings and sculptures that had shaped our lives. Friends and family gathered, not just to celebrate our union, but to witness the culmination of a story that had inspired so many. Life with Frank was a masterpiece in progress. We continued to challenge and inspire each other, creating not just art, but a life filled with meaning and connection. Together, we proved that love, like art, requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to see the beauty in every moment.